Everyone, and welcome to the first ever test edition of this podcast, which I don't know what's going to be called. You might know at some point, but we don't know right now. I'm joined by my jolly old co-host, Chris Maidment. How's it going, Chris?
Good, Joel. How are you?
Pretty good. It looks like you got a nice bit of artwork behind you. Didn't know you were an artist.
Oh, I'm not an artist. I'm here at the AFP headquarters in Manchester, AFP, New Hampshire, and these are cartoons Mike Marlin draws that highlight AFP, the illustrious Greg Moore. What do we got?
Doing his misdeeds and being characterized
we'll have to put
as
links
such.
To some of them in the summary of this.
Yeah, we definitely could. Well, yeah. So with all the crazy stuff happening out there, especially since we felt I personally, I can't speak for you. I felt we should follow in the footsteps of our former dear leader, Hillary Rodham Clinton, who recently started a podcast. And so,
what?
Yes,
Hillary did?
Yes, I've been sitting on that for weeks. I've been sitting on that way for weeks. You didn't get it, and I've been saving it for this moment. Yes,
wow,
so we're copying Hillary.
I'm going to have to download that. I'm going to have to subscribe and save.
Yes, because the good thing about long form audio type things is you get plenty of time to put your foot in your mouth. You get plenty of time to say crazy things. And much in that same vein, I don't know if we can compete with the level of shit show that will happen on the Hillary Clinton podcast, but we can only try.
Well, it's a good way to get viewers. You could just do live suicides, right?
Yes. Well, yeah. That's what they're calling them these days. You know, in the meantime, like Joseph Stalin's like, why didn't I think of that? Yeah, so let's just talk a little bit about this Democratic shit show going on right now.
Oh, you mean the quote unquote presidential?
Oh yeah, there's an election going on apparently. People are electing whoever is going to challenge who is colloquially known as God Emperor Trump for his seat on the golden throne atop the White House. So far it's been going kind of I would say as expected, but in beautiful ways. It's good old Joe Biden, former vice president, seems to be at the head of the pack. Is that the latest we've seen?
He's leading in the delegates and in the number of states, because if you remember, right before Super Tuesday, both Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar dropped out
like that one better.
And endorsed Biden because it's the Stop Bernie effort part 2. Because apparently even the Democrats don't want this socialist to be the nominee, which is fantastic for the rest of us because Joe Biden doesn't even know where he is or what he's running for.
Well, he did honestly seem to forget who he was married to. So he thought he was his sister, which I understand is popular in some parts of the country, but not. I didn't know that was from where he's from.
Don't know anywhere. Yeah. And the other, what did he say? Most recently, he was at an event and he said, we can't win this re-election. We can only elect Donald Trump.
Yeah. Which,
okay.
I don't know if he's a soothsayer. I don't know if he saw into the future and just says, look, I'm just telling you, it's all doom up ahead. Or if he just actually doesn't know where he is or what he's doing. But that wouldn't be the first time that would happen.
He doesn't know where he is or what he's doing. A couple of weeks ago, he was at an event and he said, I'm Joe Biden and I'm running for the United States Senate.
Yeah.
It's not good, but this is the chosen one.
Yes, and that's kind of weird thing about it is, first off, on a certain level, it seems like the party itself has decided this is the guy who's going to run. This is the guy we're going to run. And even though our minion voters have a say in it, we kind of pre-decided and we're going to change it. So first off, I think that's absolutely crazy that you can just give your delegates to whoever, because I understand how it works, but if, for example, say you drop out of the race and you're like, all right, I got as far as I could, I'm going to give my delegates to Biden. Well, what about the people who voted?
That's sort of how it works. Because let's say Pete Buttigieg with his, he had some number of delegates. I'm not going to look it up. I don't care that much. His delegates are pledged to him. They're not bound. So let's say New Hampshire, I think he has 9 from New Hampshire. So when those 9 Buttigieg supporters go to the convention, they get to choose who to vote for.
Mm-hmm.
So they can still vote for Buttigieg, or they can vote for Biden because that's who Buttigieg endorsed, or they can go all wild card and vote for whoever they want because they're not bound.
Mm-hmm.
They're not bound delegates.
So essentially, when you say, hey, I'm endorsing Biden, that actually has nothing to do in the real world, but practically, usually they'll probably end up doing that.
Yeah, probably most of them. There's only going to be 1 or 2 that don't. It's the same thing as the Electoral College. The electors in most states aren't bound by any laws. They can go to the Electoral College, and everybody meets in their respective states, and they can cast their vote for whoever they want. And we saw a number of Hillary dissenters in 2016, and we also saw a number of Trump dissenters.
Yeah. So that's it's kind of funny how that works from a Democratic type perspective, which, newsflash for anyone who didn't realize, but the United States of America is not an actual democracy. It has democratic elements. God. And I think but it's got to be crazy for people to say, look, like, say there's some people that are like, look, I like Bernie. I like what he's doing. I think he's great. I just kind of think that Warren is most of the good of Bernie, again, from this perspective, most of the good of Bernie, but just not quite as crazy, not quite as out there. I'm going to vote for her instead. And so
she doesn't have any principles.
Yeah. But anyway, in this hypothetical situation, the voter wants socialism, wants those bread lines, wants all that good stuff that comes along with it, and votes for Warren, and then Warren loses and endorses Biden, and now maybe all those voters like, hey, what? I hate this guy. Why are my votes going towards him? So it's a little bit of a convoluted system there. But what we don't realize is, how familiar are you with superdelegates?
Yes. Well, that's what we saw in 2016. So the whole thing.
That's what I learned in 2016 because I didn't care before then, and when I saw it, it was like,
well, it's never been a question before. It's never. I mean, in our lifetimes, I don't think it's been this close. Them picking the nominee, but the superdelegate thing. So in 2016, Bernie was running up the score and winning states that nobody thought he was going to win, and he was much closer to Hillary Clinton than anybody expected. He didn't have a majority of the delegates, though. The superdelegates didn't steal it from him. They just gave Hillary a bigger win, and it ended up being unanimous on the first ballot. Hillary Clinton nominee, boom, done. But Bernie, being all angry at having that stolen nomination, decided to get the DNC to change their rules. And every rule change he's proposed is probably going to hand the nomination to Joe Biden.
Yeah, what are some of those rule changes that you remember?
One is every state is now proportional delegate apportionment. Whereas before, some states were winner take all, and there was a whole bunch of different things. But now every single state is a proportional delegate allotment. So, for example, in California, Bernie would have won every delegate this year, would have gotten all of them. But instead, he ended up with a couple hundred, and Joe Biden ends up with a little, some number over 100. So Bernie would have gotten 415 delegates from California, but instead he ended up with 200 and I don't know. I'll look it up. So and then the super delegates thing, because the super delegates are elected party officials from the different states. So, for example, in New Hampshire, it would be like Senate President Donna Soucy, Chair Ray Buckley. It would be those kind of people that aren't regular delegates. They can't be regular delegates. They're super delegates. They won't get a vote on the first ballot now because of Bernie. So if Biden ends up with a majority of the first ballot votes, he's the nominee.
Wow.
And then it's over.
Yeah. The funny thing about having a mechanism like superdelegates is, first off, it's something that people don't really talk about, that the two major parties are very different in this one area. They both kind of suck. They're both kind of, in my opinion, they both kind of a little bit of a, disaster. But
I have a news flash for you. All of federal politics suck.
Yes, but aren't they fun to watch? It's funny that the so-called Democratic Party has more non-democratic elements to it, to where there's a little bit of kingmaker ability in there. And so, do you feel at all sorry for Bernie that he's
Ow.
he did not even let me finish my
Not even
sentence?
a little bit.
Yeah. It is kind of funny. I won't say feel sorry for, but a lot of his supporters do want something meaningfully different, and they're going to get more of the same, and that does kind of suck. But at the same time, I kind of wonder what he's expecting, because little known fact, Bernie isn't even a Democrat.
Yeah,
He's
that's right.
not been a Democrat, as far as I know, for a very long time.
He's independent in Vermont.
Yes. So, but he, runs as a Democrat and goes into the Democratic Party as a usurper of sorts. And then you can kind of be surprised when they try to keep him out a little bit. I don't know. That part doesn't quite make sense to me. Like, I would kind of realize that if I'm going to be an independent running in one of the major parties, and still an independent, not like a Ron Paul type who's just like through and through Republican, but clearly independently minded on a lot of stuff. I would expect to win by an absolute convincing majority, or not at all.
Yes. And that's, we see them moving in Bernie's direction. So, win or lose, he's moving their party to the left.
Yeah, that's for sure. And one thing that sort of surprised me I don't know if it surprised me, but when he started getting all that momentum, I thought, I was like, oh, this is it. They're going to have to pull some major robbery, or they're just going to have to like grit it and just like let him in. But the amount of people that just will not vote for him in the Democratic Party, like, it's not quite as crazy as like the Ron Paul type situation, but it's funny how he seems to be kind of a Democratic Party dream. He seems to be kind of pretty hardcore on all the issues they say that they care about. And like all these other people are just, stodgy losers who just, I don't know, just have this like hodgepodge of talking points. And it turns out, I guess, the ideas that the party radicals seem to espouse aren't actually that popular with the whole rest of the party.
No, I think Bernie has a ceiling. So even if he wins the nomination and he is the nominee, he has a ceiling, because there's only so many people that want to get rid of private health insurance. 100% gone. 160 million people in the United States, or whatever the number is, I'm making that number up off the top of my head,
of course,
have private insurance, and he's just going to take it away. All these union members that have private insurance, that's why they're part of the union, is to get this great health care that they've collectively bargained for over the years. And he's just going to rip away that stellar Cadillac insurance that those guys have, and everybody's going to get the same. How many people are actually going to vote for that?
Yeah, not a lot of people when they think, although to be fair, I don't know if people have thought that far through. People don't seem to be that, a lot of voters aren't that much on the thinking side as far as like thinking of the actual implications in their personal life of these things. But I do think that is spot on in terms of the general sentiment that people see. Well, I like a lot of what this guy's saying, but wow, that's radical. That's a big change. I'm scared of big change. And so let's just little change or no change, but like big change scares people.
Well, that's like the analogy you made to Ron Paul. It's the same thing. Like, he's a big change kind of guy.
Yeah.
And a lot of sub movements have spurred out of his run that fight for incremental change.
Yeah.
But he painted the picture. He said, we're going over here. And everybody else was like, well, maybe not overnight.
Yeah, not exactly.
Let's take a step over there and see how it goes.
Which, of course, makes me feel sorry for the Ron Paul of this election, Tulsi Gabbard, who seems to be the absolute darling of a lot of libertarians. I think she's fine, but, it's like I have no interest in voting for someone like that who believes in a lot of big government policies that just I wouldn't care about. But seems to be a decent human being, seems to be consistent on things, and for some reason seems to be acting like she's the independent in the Democratic primary. Just seems to be like not caring about the party at all, just trying to burn everything to the ground. I'm like, whoa there. Okay. I mean, I'm not complaining. But
of 2020, but she's not really all that radical. She is in lockstep with much of the Democrat platform, including, gun control and higher taxes and, healthcare for all, however you want to paint that picture. The only thing she's good on is, you're going to have to legalizing marijuana and ending foreign wars, I think. I think that's it. That's all she's good on.
Yeah, which makes me wonder why do they hate her so much?
Well, in 2016, she was the vice chair of the Democrat Party at the national level under, I don't know, Wasserman Schultz or whoever it was, or Donna Brazil.
One of those people.
And she quit the DNC during the primary so that she could endorse Bernie Sanders. So she's endorsed Bernie Sanders just 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And now she's supposed to be some savior to the, I get the couple things that she's really strong on, which is ending foreign wars and bringing our troops home, being non-interventionist and legalizing weed. And that's, I think, where the libertarians get hung up on her. And plus, she does present herself as a really decent person. I met her. She's very eloquent. She's very polite. She's very...
Yeah.
Great.
She's got a great gym routine.
Yeah.
I think that's the real reason, because, the male and the single male heavy libertarian side of things is just like, oh, yeah. But I think it's funny how she doesn't seem that dangerous really to the Democrats, but they're really trying to keep her out. And, with SNL and stuff, painting her as a supervillain and stuff like that. And just everyone just like this is an evil person for wanting the exact same things all the rest of us do. Just like kind of not wanting. I think to a great extent, it's probably the skeletons in the closet thing. She's like Kamala Harris, put the head in the toilet until the body stops twitching. Like, just go to town on the actual record, like all the things that the Democrats tend to run on, but don't actually do or haven't actually done in practice. And so I think it's kind of like by being pure is a little too positive sounding of a word, but we'll use it anyway. Being a very pure candidate as far as like, these are the ideas that we're supposed to apply and I apply them. Then now they're like, oh wait, all of us run on these, but all of our records are terrible.
Well, I like to use memes because meme warfare is just fantastic.
Yes. Control the memes of production, you control society.
There was one I saw earlier today. There's a picture of Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump shaking hands. And it says, that was what, 34 years ago. So 34 years ago, when this picture was taken, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi were in Congress blaming Reagan for all of the country's problems. 34 years later, Donald Trump is the president. Pelosi and Schumer are in Congress and still blaming Donald Trump for all of the country's problems. What have they done in 34 years? Anything?
Yeah, clearly not very much. And clearly there's been a little bit of power swings back and forth. And I think there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that is just, they're all kind of okay with like the middle ground. Like, oh, we want our radical fridges here and there, but we're okay with all this lack of substantive, meaningful change. Yes, but speaking of a poor person, a poor public official being shut out of things, something like that happened in the local scene in a much different way, of people actually voting for something and getting it. A birdie tells me that in Croydon, New Hampshire.
Yeah, if you read the papers lately, you'll learn that Croydon is run by evil, wicked free staters, those gosh darn people that want to preserve your freedom. So what happened? So it's a long story. It actually goes back to last year. The select board in Croydon has been looking for ways to dissolve the police department for over a year.
Which is just a fantastic idea. It really makes the Ron Swanson and me chuckle. But so why? Do you have any idea of the backstory of like why they want to get rid of the police department? I kind of like the idea in principle, but was there some story we weren't aware of that this?
Well, it's a small town, right?
Yeah.
It's a really, really small town. I'm going to look up the population right now. And they had one full-time police officer who was the chief. and he worked 40 or whatever hours a week, and it cost them $48,000 a year for his services.
Yeah, which is not very much, to be honest.
It's not a lot of money. Well, that's the wrong Croydon.
There's a few.
350,000 is too many. 757 is the population of Croydon as of
that's great.
2017. So they had this one police chief work full time, and they wanted, efficiency reports. They wanted reports to show how many calls he went on. They wanted reports to show what the calls were. They wanted to find out if they could save the taxpayers money. I mean, 48,000 isn't a lot of money, but in a small town of 757, if the 757 people paying the tax bill, then your share gets a little bit bigger. So they wanted to save some money. And last year, I think the select board voted to dissolve the Croydon Police Department. This went to town meeting. So they voted to put on the ballot to dissolve the Croydon Police Department and hire the next town over, which is Newport. It's a bigger town. Have Newport do their policing for them.
Okay, and I'm assuming for a cheaper amount because you're just kind of contracting some hours from their cops rather than,
Yeah, so you only pay per call, but it ended up, I think Newport would have been more expensive. It would have been more expensive, but you would have 24/7 coverage. I think that was how that shook out. People watching this will correct me if I'm wrong. If people watch this, people aren't going to watch this.
Some people will, and from my experience, the kinds of people who will watch it will give you a binder of corrections next time they see you in person.
Oh, excellent! I love binders.
Yes.
I can throw them at my staffers, like Amy Klondike bar.
Especially if they're full of women. Again, hey, 2012, 2016 reference, or whichever year it was. Was it 2012?
So the town voted it down. They didn't want to hire Newport to do their policing. So as it stood as of last month, right? This police chief was still on the job, and he was only responding to 20% of the calls. 80% of the calls were handled by New Hampshire State Police, either because the chief wasn't on duty or was already on a call or whatever the situations were. Maybe he wasn't working the right hours, but he wasn't providing any information to the select board so that they could figure out what was going on. So 81% of the calls in Croydon were handled by the New Hampshire State Police anyways. So the select board said, well, we're just going to dissolve the police department and the state police can handle 100% of the calls and we'll save $50,000.
Yes, or as it works out, a little over $60 per person a year.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Which is, I mean, I love $60. You can do a lot with it,
Yeah, I can go stock up on toilet paper for the coronavirus.
Ooh, that's coming next.
Later. So at the select board meeting, they voted to dissolve the police department. And they said, all right, turn in your vehicle and your keys and your badge and your gun and whatever. And they said, we need your uniform. Now, nobody has one uniform. He wasn't wearing his one uniform. It wasn't like they needed it right then. But to get publicity, I guess, or to garner sympathy, he decided to strip down to his underwear and boots in front of the select board and walk home in the snow, which of course made national news.
So were the boots not part of the uniform?
I guess they were his boots, which kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I guess. But it's so first off, if you're making your case for why you should still have a job and you take your pants off in front of your superiors, that doesn't usually go that well. I mean, maybe it has for some people like, Joe Biden and his ilk, but not for everyone else.
Yeah, I don't think if I decided to take my pants off in this office, I don't think AFP would let me back. So
yeah, they would find creative ways of they'd probably move the office.
I think when they move the office in a couple of months, it's not because of me. For the record, they're moving anyway.
Well, yeah, but you might as well get some correlation in there to try to imply some causation while you're at it.
I'll just wait till the new office to take my pants off.
Exactly. So this gentleman decided he was going to walk. Do you know how far home was from there?
No,
probably. I mean, it can't have been very far.
The story he got halfway and his wife picked him up. So why couldn't he just wait at this town hall until his wife got there? Or why didn't he just there were people in the meeting that are friends with him that offered him a ride home, and he said no. He said no, I'm going to walk home in my underwear so that I can be I can get my 15 minutes of fame and garner all this sympathy from the thin blue line crowd around the state.
Yeah, which is pretty funny because that seems not like a adult type thing to do. It seemed, and I've seen pictures of this guy. He's like, older. He's like a steely haired dude, little mustache and stuff, the cop mustache, and he like. I think we're kind of beyond that. I mean, I understand it sucks to lose your job at any point, especially, but if you're like not responding to 80% of calls, whether or not it's either you're overworked or you just suck. And so it seems like, yeah, it seems like they determined that, hey, it was probably that he sucked. And then, you got to get another job. Sorry. I mean, does he get any kind of a pension or anything involved with any of this sort of thing?
I'm sure there's got to be a pension. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if if it qualifies as a state employee. I don't know how any of that works. I know he got like a 1 month severance package when he was fired.
Oh, that's great.
And maybe he'll get a new job. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, maybe
the next town over is Newport.
Maybe the Stadies will hire him, and he'll just keep on responding to 80% of the crime in his own town again. Like, who knows? Who knows? They just roll it in, because that's the thing with government.
Well,
they never get rid of money.
Yeah, you got to look at his actions now, though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when he got fired, he decided to strip down to his underwear and walk home like a 3-year-old. Like my son would do that if I yelled at him. My son does do that when I yell at him. So
he probably does that even if you don't yell at him.
Yeah, I mean, he's 3. Well, he's almost 3. But I mean, that's just what they do. But who's going to hire this guy? I mean, this made national news. It was on CNN. It was on Fox News. It was Union Leader. It was
he's probably going to get hired. Like, getting news for you, just because of the stunt. Because I think that most people just see the visual and they're just like, oh, people did him a dirty. We're going to make sure he's taken care of.
But is that the mentality of somebody that you want policing your neighborhood?
No, absolutely not. I don't want that kind of like, well, let me put it this way. And this may be a controversial opinion, I do kind of want his working mentality in a cop. I want someone who just like sits on his ass and does nothing and leaves me the hell alone. But, and I'm willing to pay for it too. But hey, if they can just not pay for it and not have him, I mean, it seems like a win-win. But yeah, I do agree that this guy would, I don't think that making some kind of like, that's the thing when you're talking about an official who's trusted with the peace or some kind of thing like that, you're trying to go for some mature, level-headed servant mentality kind of a person.
Well, that's what I would look for. Yeah. Somebody that wants to actually serve, and do good and accomplish good and enforce the laws that need to be enforced. Like, putting murderers away is a good thing. Murderers belong behind bars.
Yeah. So if this fellow is offered another job in the same line of work and he maintains with him the same mentality, I don't know how comfortable I am with, like, what if someone just says, hey, it's Mr. Hard Underwear, and then like he just kicks the crap out of this poor kid who's just, being an asshole, of course, but if he's that kind of impulsive dude who just like, I'm going to make a point or this and that, is he going to make a point on this guy's face? Like,
I don't know how impulsive it was, because it was on the agenda and he showed up knowing it was on the agenda. So this was probably thought that it was premeditated.
Yeah, exactly. So, premeditated vengeance against people. Like, that's another red flag. But then again, there's with all the different nonsense with government employees, when they do something wrong, they usually just keep doing those wrong things, or sometimes even get NPR to do a thing on them saying how much they're heroes, or or maybe they just catch the coronavirus and then they leave us all alone. But yeah, and speaking of which, are you freaked out?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I have I'm up to 4,000 rolls of toilet paper, I think, so I might be covered.
Oh, I think you're covered. You are covered in 2-ply, I bet. Just all over the place.
Oh no, I have a septic system. I go 1-ply. Plus, I'm kind of cheap. So. Oh,
that's terrible. Well, so the coronavirus
the world is freaked out, though. Apparently, if you've seen the stock market today.
Yeah, which that's a slightly separate, but pretty much the same conversation. I think that a lot of that's been the coronavirus has taken the fall for the actual, economy. I think that there could have been a chance that there was going to be a recession anyway, and now that we just have that little thing to kick it off, now people are going to be like, well, it's just because of this flu thing that most people survive, just about everyone gets. I don't know. I'm not personally that worried right now, mostly because I'm more or less uninformed on the issue. But it just seems like I haven't been able to get a really compelling argument by why it's terrifying for me in person. It seems like
For you personally, it's probably not a concern. I think the death rate for people under 50 is like 0.03%. As long as you're an otherwise healthy person. If if they say that you should be a little bit worried if you have other chronic illnesses, especially respiratory disease. Like I have asthma, and it might be COPD by now. Who knows? I've had it for 28 years. But someone like me, I guess they're saying I should be a little bit concerned because I'm probably going to end up in the hospital if I get it. But there's no one saying that like, oh my God, I'm going to die.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely not in the slightest bit concerned that this could be a threat to my actual well-being in any meaningful way, except the one thing, the only compelling, there's been a lot of, oh, it's going everywhere. You just don't realize how bad it is. There's been a lot of hyperbolic kind of statements about how bad it is with not a lot of explanations of like, why is it? Except the only thing I've heard that has made me a little concerned is that the vast majority, like something like 80% of the people who get it end up in the ICU or something. Or was it 80 or 20? I don't remember. It was a high amount.
I think 20.
Yeah,
I think 80 we would know about.
I knew there was an 80. 80 don't end up in there.
Yeah.
So 20% of the people that get it end up in the ICU. And so it could be an infrastructural problem to where if 20% of if like a giant chunk of the town gets it, or significant enough numbers get it, then it's significant enough end up in the ICU, and that overloads the healthcare system. And then if something bad actually happens, then there's nothing for them. That's a little bit of a concern, but only if it spreads like wildfire. I mean, already New Hampshire's primed for like the snow day kind of thing anyway, where they just yay, we get to just like chill at home and just we're grumpy sons of bitches anyway. Like just
right. Like we spend weekends inside because of snow and ice all the time. So, but I think one interesting thing that could come out of this is worldwide, we're starting to see that schools are just shutting down for weeks on end, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the kids are still learning. So we can still teach kids if they're not in a government school building.
And they won't get infectious diseases and die.
And yeah, for some families that work 2 full-time jobs or whatever, single parents, it's probably not tenable to have your kid at home all day long, but there are other solutions out there. And this is going to force people to realize that kids don't have to be bused to centralized locations to sit in government schools in order to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be one of those wake-up call type things, I think, for a lot of people. First off, it's making preppers cool again because everyone's like scrambling.
Preppers have always been cool, okay?
But most of the world didn't know that. They just thought, hey, we're these crazy people. But now there's a reason. Now it's like, hey, I don't have to raid Walmart at all. I already do that, so I'm good. And I think it's going to expose a lot of different things about how diseases and quarantines are handled in this country. One thing I thought was hilarious on both levels. It's one of those things that, see, a lot of people who comment on the political sphere are very sort of black or white. Is this good? Is this bad? All this, I'm pro this, I'm anti this. Some things just are what they are, and there's a mixture. And the one thing about this state is the live free or die spirit. And there's that gentleman who supposedly was suspected of being infected allegedly.
Well, he was. So this is one of the common phrases that we've been seeing. They tested presumed positive.
Yes.
So they tested them, and they're just presuming it's positive. Mm-hmm. So they said, okay, well, go home and self-quarantine. Which, first of all, you can't self-quarantine. Not a thing. Quarantine needs to be like quarantined. You can isolate yourself, which is really what we're talking about. He was told to isolate himself from the rest of the world so he doesn't go around spreading his infection. And then he went to, what did he go to?
Some fundraiser thing, some business networking event in Dartmouth, which is it's like one of the most New Hampshire things to do. It's like someone just says, hey, this could be a public danger. Stay in your house. And you just like whatever, I do what I want. And he just like leaves. He just goes about his business. It's just such a New Hampshire thing for all the good and bad that it entails. Of just like,
he's a doctor. He's a doctor with a medical license. And the first rule, so I've been told, if you're a doctor, is first do no harm.
Mm-hmm.
Nitwit's off spreading his disease to everybody that was at that meeting.
Yeah, because he's just a grumpy dude. He just, whatever. I don't want to, like, I'm not going to miss my bingo game or whatever. I don't know how old he is. Whatever. But
yeah, he's young. Who cares? Yeah,
it's funny. I think that's irresponsible behavior. Like, if you have any kind of suspicion that you've been, I would just kind of lay low for a couple weeks. It's not like it's the rest of your life. It's not like you're a bear and you're going to come out of.
Came back negative.
Yeah.
Hang out for a few hours and wait for the call from the doctor saying, "Hey, it's negative."
Yeah,
or just positive.
Yeah, it's not like you're going to be like a bear in your cave all winter and you're going to come back with like 30 pounds less, in your frame or whatever from the winter. It's like, no, you just watch some Netflix. I mean, I think you'll be fine.
If somebody told me to isolate in my house, I would probably lose my mind.
Yeah, you'd probably end up
with terrible internet. And I love my kids, but I don't know how my wife stays home with them all day. I don't know. I don't care. Yeah,
it's a different kind of patience for sure.
It's a mother's patience.
Yes. So you'd probably be better off, like, deciding, getting a knife, again, stripping down your underwear, going to the woods as a game and just seeing how long you can survive on your own before you have to, like, come back to the farmhouse to, like, actually, like, eat and bathe and things. But, like, you'd have to gamify it just in order to keep yourself from losing your goddamn mind.
Well, I would just take my backpacking gear, and I got a nice little tent, set up a fire. I'd find that bear that's been eating my chickens, and I'd have a good eating for a while.
Yeah, or we get you there first. But hey, let's put happy thoughts out there.
I'd rather have a bear get me than the coronavirus. So.
Yeah, exactly. I don't even know what the symptoms are of, like, the way you pass away. You just, like, not breathe. And you just go away. Do you bleed through your eyeballs or something seriously metal like that? Like,
I have no idea, but I have heard that the serious cases have gone into a coma. So I don't know if you die while you're in the coma or what happens, but
yeah, well, all that happens is you turn into.
I'll let you know.
All that happens when you pass away from corona is you just turn into good old sleepy Joe Biden, and we've come full circle.
Is that where we started?
Something like that. It's probably a good time to end it too before this recording thing cuts us off. But thanks everyone for tuning in. This has been a fun little chat back and forth. Don't expect great things from this, but if they happen anyway, please give us the requisite praise. And hopefully we'll see you all next time.